Hello! Oh, that was fast. How are you guys? Just like that. More people. Love it, love it, love it, love it. How's it going tonight? Come on in. Let's go over the week. If you guys are, I should take I have my Invisalign on. If you guys are waiting for tomorrow's podcast, ooh, it should be a good one. Hey, Dave. How's Nebraska? Hey, Reggie. Welcome back. Hey, Shane. Okay. You know, a farmer's favorite thing to talk about is the weather. We had snowflakes today. It is not even Halloween. If we have snow before Halloween, that is not a good thing. And so we had some snow today. It's cold. It's cold depending on who you talk to. Depending on who you talk to. Hey, Heidi. How's it going down there? Oh, you're getting cold too, Dave. Yeah. I think we're like in the 40s this week. Hey, Brooklyn. Colorado. Okay, let's get started because you guys are all ready. You know the routine. If you are new, which you very well may be, welcome to our Facebook Live on Thursday. I am just going to go over the meetings I had for the week, share with you some strategies we applied, and then possibly you're going to get some ideas for yourself. And is this going to work for you, not work for you? Do you have the most horrible situation ever and now you hear what others have and it's not the most horrible situation ever? Hello, Torgeson Farms. Oh, you told me your first name last week, the week before, and I forgot it, and I was so proud of myself because I could pronounce it. Okay, so really the theme this week was nobody has life insurance. And it's really amazing to me when I come across farmers and ranchers with debt and no life insurance. And the reason why is because we have so much debt usually and no life insurance. So that was kind of this week's theme. I think I had one client all week out of all of my meetings that had life insurance. Craziness, if nothing else. If nothing else, term is not the end of the world. Go get yourself some term insurance until you meet with me, because we do term, and you're going to see that kind of in this week's meetings. That's kind of what we have to do for some of these people is term insurance until we can get them to a point financially where we can start some whole life. So there absolutely is a need for it. You do not want to die and be the GoFundMe recipient, right? So we are seeing so many GoFundMe accounts. And when I see somebody pass away and they have a GoFundMe account, guess what? That was not enough to even cover burial expenses. It is about $15,000 for a funeral. And then your spouse or loved one, whoever, isn't going to go to work the next day. So that is important. But it's amazing to me that the banks don't care, that the banks are not mandating you to have life insurance and you have all this debt. So Enrique. And you even put the E on there. Thank you. Hey, Mike. Okay, so first one we're going to go over today is this couple had a very good off the farm income. They just moved back to the farm. They just built a house close to the farm. And because they have such good off the farm income, there is no need to really manage finances. And so a lot of money is getting spent, but we don't really know where. And a lot of money is going back into the farm. That's not his. And so the mom owns the farm and the son is putting money in, but right now it's all set up that the siblings get it all divided equally, or they're going to all own it together, essentially. And so that's great, but it's his money, right? And so mom doesn't really have anything for retirement, so he's most likely also going to have to take care of mom. And that's very noble. But we also have to make sure that he somehow gets his money back if he continues to do that. And if mom doesn't change the estate plan and he doesn't care, that's his problem. Like, I mean, some people are okay with that. And I shouldn't say it's his problem, because if that's what he chooses to do, that's fine. But if he buys a life insurance policy on mom, then when she passes away, at least he'll have gotten some of his money back. The numbers that we just quickly ran today, at her age, we were paying about 52 cents for every dollar of death benefit. And that's awesome. That's a good buy. She was in her early 60s. And so, or she is in her early 60s. And so that's a pretty good buy. 52 cents when she's likely to pass at about 87, I think the numbers were. But one strategy for him to kind of get that back. Another strategy was, does she do a contract for deed so he can buy it from her now, providing her income the rest of her life, and have something and know that it's his, so any money is going to him. Now, of course, mom has to be okay with that, and that conversation has to be had. But when we're doing a first meeting, I'm throwing out strategies, and it's a lot of strategies, and you can take them and do what you want with them, but it's stuff I've come across or ideas. It doesn't mean that they have to be implemented. It's just giving you ideas of what you can do. The other thing that this couple had done is he took advantage of the CARES Act, and I don't even know if he had read my book. Definitely was done way before we talked. But he automatically took like 80,000 out of his 401k, and they paid off a bunch of other debt, which freed up about $1,300 a month. And so fantastic, but nobody was putting that $1,300 a month in savings. Nobody was being honest about it. Nobody knows really where it was going. And so prior to us meeting as well, they had created a spreadsheet and kind of a budget to kind of watch where all their money was going. Because when you make a certain amount of money and you don't have to watch every penny, Parkinson's law becomes a little bit less important. And so those of you that don't know what Parkinson's law is, Nelson talks about it here. I also go over it in my podcast. But Parkinson's law is our needs rise to meet our income. And so as we have more income, we have more needs. And then we just start spending money. And that's just human nature. But if we can get over that and really pay attention to where is our money going, that helps. And so it was a nice conversation just to have about, hey, don't forget to pay yourself back. You actually took retirement money. And it's one pool of money, so you have to pay it back, so you have it there for retirement. And so will that money go into a policy for premium? Because you were used to paying it. So definitely, they're doing all the right things. It's just a matter of being honest with that money and deciding how are we going to best utilize it, and kind of getting their feet on stable ground again, because they've been a little bit frivolous. And it happens to all of us. It was interesting because he said a couple of times during the meeting, he's like, don't yell at me. And so I may have some German passion going on in my podcast, but I do not yell at people in my meetings. And so I'm not going to yell at you for being human. If you took money out of a 401k, I'm not going to yell at you for that. That's your money. You get to decide that. And so there were a couple things he thought I was going to yell at him for, but nobody got yelled at today. But we did talk about, okay, now that we took it, we have to be honest. And we have really had the lessons behind infinite banking. And tomorrow's podcast goes over that. Really, I talk about getting back to the basics, which is what? A thought process. Not the numbers, not the policy, not the company. It's the thought process. And the thought process of, I took $80,000 and paid all this debt off. Woohoo! I get to go spend an extra $1,300 a month, is not being an honest banker. That's not going to create wealth. We have to think like a banker and act like a banker. The next couple I talked to, they didn't think I was going to yell at them. But it's interesting. I do get clients like this often. It's not that it's not even rare for it to happen, but it's typically people in their 50s. They'll schedule a meeting with me and they are so embarrassed by where they're at. And this particular couple almost had everything paid off. And then, they were doing really, really well when commodity prices were high. And they bought stuff to avoid taxes. And he totally recognized that. That is exactly what happened. We bought things to avoid taxes, and now we're still having to pay for those things, and we don't have the money, and we are now on year 3 or 4 of a really bad commodity price, a drought, no crop production. We've had crop insurance having to save us. And so they really thought they were doing horribly, and they were really embarrassed, and they have nothing to be embarrassed by because it happens. And that's what they knew then, but what they know today is very different after reading the book. And so and again, another couple with a ton of money in IRAs, but needing cash flow. And so their thought as well is, do I take the money out of the IRA and pay off some of these bank loans so that I can free up some of that cash flow? But we're paying that back to ourselves. And if, his big thing is, well, every time I go into the financial advisor, they're telling me that I'm making 9%. Okay, then pay yourself back at 9%. And you still make the 9%, right? I mean, obviously it's not going to be on the total, but pay yourself back at 9% or more. Be honest about it. And so we have this retirement money sitting here again, but we go to the bank, and the bank is being very nice. They're not being difficult to deal with. This couple just does not want debt, and that's okay. But they also have, in addition to the farm, they also have an entity where they're doing some custom farming. And that entity is making money to cover up the losses on the other farm portion of what they have going on. And so it's not like they were underwater completely. It's just that one was carrying the other. But they keep very good books. And the one that is not doing okay, they were not happy about, because this one shouldn't have to carry this one. And they're right. They're absolutely right. But we gave them some strategies as well. The other strategy was leave the money in the 401k or the IRA. I would prefer you not have to take it out. And so they have some equipment loans. And he said, there's equipment that I don't need. There's equipment I don't use, and I can sell that. And I said, that's great that you can sell it, but are you gonna sell it? And he's like, yeah, I don't need it. I'm good with selling it. And she said, you've been saying that for 2 years, right? Because I know that saying you can sell it and actually selling it are two different things. It's hard to get rid of equipment like it's hard to get rid of land, because we think we're going to need it, or we're emotionally attached to it, or what if, right? And so if we can get rid of that and pay off the equipment loan on the equipment he actually is using and free up cash flow, that's a big deal. The other thing that I found really interesting was they said that they have their accountant. They asked me what they're keeping books in and such, but then she made a comment about their accountant and said their accountant is good at just figuring out if they have to pay taxes at the end of the year or not. But nobody has ever actually sat down and gave them strategies. And we went through strategies today, and they left with homework, and a lot of homework to figure out what they want to do, what's the best option, what's most comfortable for them. And I was really, I shouldn't say that I was surprised, because it's very normal for an accountant to not give you strategies. They just want to help you avoid taxes. And who cares if we have to pay taxes? Because what he avoided in tax, he is now paying to the bank in interest on equipment notes. So he really didn't save anything, but the accountant thinks that we're saving you something. But they were happy to have the strategies. So it was nice to hear that, because to me, that's just normal. Every day, that's what I do when I talk to clients. We're talking about strategies. And I forget that not everybody does that, but that is part of the first meeting. But I think the big takeaway from that sweet couple is that don't get so down on yourself, and they had like 5 loans. I said, that's it? And they're like, that's it. That's it. You don't have that much debt. And so, I posted this on, I didn't post this on my business page the other day, but somebody shared something on Facebook, and I shared it and said, compared to what? And so you think that you're doing horribly, but compared to what? Compared to where they were when everything was paid off. The other thing that we talked about is farming is very much like gambling, right? We're gonna be at the craps table, and we're having some good rolls, and then all of a sudden we have 3 or 4 bad rolls of the dice, but we just don't want to walk away because the next one could be the big one. We could get back everything. And if we have 3 bad years, are we better off to just not farm and not put anything in the ground? And instead of losing $100,000, we have a $60,000 land payment? I mean, if we're going backwards by over $100,000 a year, and we can just go backwards by 60, which is the land payment, or we can at least rent the ground out, and maybe, like in their situation, they could get about $50,000 for land rent, and their land payment was 60. We're really only having to come up with 10. Otherwise, we go through all this work to go backwards by 100, just to see if the roll of the dice is better the next time. Maybe it'll rain, and maybe it will. But we don't know. And when we're going backwards for so many years, at what point do we cut our losses? And at what point do we say, you know what, we don't have to sell everything. Just lease it out, maybe not plant, maybe have somebody come in and cash rent it. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out. But that is one idea that never crosses our mind, to not plant. We have land, we're farmers, we plant. Okay. But we don't know, right? we don't know if we're going to have the rain. We don't know what commodity prices are. It is a hard call. I 100% understand. But it's truly like gambling. And how far in the hole can we go? But regardless, do not feel bad where you're at. You only know what you know at the time that you know it, right? Now that you've read the book, now that you're here, now that you're learning all this new stuff, we can implement it and make some changes going forward. Do not be so hard on yourself. Dave, can you explain contract for deed? I'm just talking about if mom were to, I was talking about if mom were to sell it to the son and pay him an interest rate. So maybe mom says for 30 years, because her place is paid for, I'm going to sell it to you rather than you go to the bank. And so there's a contract between mom and son that he's buying from her, and it's basically the same as the bank. So that is what I'm talking about. All right. I had another couple, both off the farm jobs, and they had a small 45 acre operation that they were just getting started very slowly. They had, I don't know, 11 head of cows or 20 or something. Not a lot, but they're doing it very smart. And so, you're welcome, Dave. They're doing it very smart. And so they're making sure that they're doing rotational grazing. They're making sure that the ground is okay. They're making sure that they know all their numbers, because why? Dad did not do that. And they don't, and they're actually trying to be, dad and the uncle are trying to talk them out of ranching. And they want to ranch. And so they're like, this can be profitable if you understand what you're doing and know what you're doing and pay attention. And so they're really paying attention to their numbers, which is fantastic. But the husband said the best thing ever: if we don't make money, we're not going to keep doing it. And I love it, because it's a business and you have to make money. You don't want to keep doing something that you lose money at. That is not a business. You cannot continue to do business that way. And that's when we get into trouble. And so for them, the big question was, and the strategy was, do we buy a used tractor? Because we need to make hay. And it was XYZ to buy hay last year. I don't remember what it cost, but they're thinking they can make it cheaper. Do we buy a tractor? Do we buy a used tractor? Do we buy a brand new tractor, or what? And so I said, okay, what are the payments? If we buy a used tractor, it's like $300 a month. If we buy a new tractor, it is $600 a month. And we all know what comes with new, warranty and all that good stuff, right? Because right now he's spending 3-4 hours a day fixing equipment because it wasn't taken care of by dad. And by the time he gets done fixing equipment, it's time to go to work, and he's doing shift work. So do we want to be doing that? That's not productive. And then I said, well, okay, can you lease it? Not that I love leasing, not a fan of leasing vehicles or anything. However, there comes a time when cash flow is important. And so if they can lease that piece of equipment for less than the payments on a new one, have the warranty, have all that stuff, decide if they need it, if they like it. If they don't, they can just return it, right? And maybe, just maybe, I don't know how this works, but check it out and ask questions. Just maybe they can lease for the few months that they absolutely need that piece of equipment. Maybe they don't need to lease the whole, or maybe they won't need to have a year lease. Again, I don't know. I have just heard of other people leasing for 3-4 months, and that's it. Okay, so if I only need to lease during hay season, Can we do that? Because that's a lot less cash flow out of pocket. Yes, I understand you're renting a tractor. But an option when cash flow is important, because cash flow is king and it is always important. All right. Let's see. Oh, yes, I had another guy that was, this is funny. Super nice guy, works off the farm, works like 4 days a week off the farm, has a really good paying off the farm job. He has small acreage as well. He has been doing direct to consumer beef for 10 years, so way before it was even cool. And he's super frugal. So he actually doesn't have everything he needs. Instead, he borrows it from his brothers when he needs it. And he said, I don't even have a pickup that can pull the trailer. So I borrow it from my brothers. And my brothers say, why don't you just go buy one? And he said, why should I when you did? And his brothers let him use it and don't even charge him. So again, I've said this before, like, do we all need to go buy something? If he only needs it 6 times a year, just go borrow somebody's. You know, you're going to have that payment. And now we're upside down because we have to have all of our own stuff. And he's just not that big of an operation that he needs his own stuff. So I kind of laughed about that. But what was really funny is he said, well, I have a confession. I met with my agent. And he said, you told me not to in the book, but I took it as a challenge. And I'm like, well, that would be a first. I mean, maybe other people have taken it as a challenge and they've just never said anything to me. But he took it as a challenge and he met with his agent. And so we did go over a little bit of what his agent was trying to do. The company that his agent works for cannot structure a policy the way we do. And so hence 0 cash value in year 1. And it was a 20 pay, which means he can only put money in for 20 years. I have a problem with those for somebody his age. Maybe for somebody in their late 60s, but not for somebody in their 30s and 40s. Because once that policy really gets going, we have to stop putting money into it. Why would we do that? That is silly. There is no reason for that. The only reason that this company is doing it is because it's their only option to get cash value to grow that quickly. So great mutual company, great traditional whole life, great organization. I've talked to many agents with the company and they're good people. I actually really like them. They just don't have the best tool for infinite banking. So anyway, he had a confession and it was a challenge. Didn't realize I was challenging people, but you know what? If you're going to take it, I will help you. Next guy, he quit his off the farm job, went to farming, which he calls gardening because it is very small, like garden size, but they are all about producing good food for people that they're doing farmers markets through. So that was really cool. The thing that we looked at with them is that his biggest cost is help. He might have a big garden, as he calls it, but it is big enough that he can't do it all himself. And so I said, you know, I talked to a guy not so long ago that he actually was going to school for farming, which in some people's opinions would be gardening, because it was about a half an acre or an acre garden or something like that, which is huge. And so I didn't realize colleges had courses for this, but this guy taught at that, and then he's teaching by taking care of this farm. And so I said, if there are classes or ag classes that these students are in where he's at locally, you might be able to get a student to help you as in some like an internship or something. And maybe some hours, and then it's just more knowledge and all that stuff coming from those kids. So absolutely, like, look into that, and that's free help, because that was going to be 10 grand a year. That was the difference between a positive cash flow or negative. And then there were some elderly people in the community that just wanted to volunteer and be outside in a garden. And so he was looking at maybe bringing some more of those people in as well. But be creative, you guys. Don't just think, oh, I got to hire somebody. Are there colleges? Are there elderly people that just want to get out and move, and they're stuck in some apartment or something like that, that they can't have that, and they used to have that and they want it? And, it's not, we'll work for food, right? So be creative in your thought process. We were talking to a teacher the other day who was talking about his students, and he said that he gave them an assignment and they couldn't get the answer. And he goes, well, did you Google it? And they're like, well, we can't do that. And he said, why can't you Google the answer? I didn't say you couldn't Google the answer. And so we are so stuck that we don't think, oh my gosh, they didn't say that. Or why wouldn't somebody ask, well, can we Google it? Like, we just don't even think to go there. So be creative about that kind of stuff. Same as just us trying to find money, is being creative. Let's see here. Okay, I had another real small, like 16 acres. Same thing, only in year 2 or 3, doing some, she's not gardening. They're doing more protein type stuff, but just getting started, and fencing and infrastructure and all those sort of things on these small operations take a lot of money. And so we are not going to be able to start anything whole life on them. And they were the only ones with insurance, but of course they had awful stuff. Nonetheless, what they have is okay for now. And then maybe we'll do some term if that's what they want to do, or just keep what they have and just wait, maybe a year or two until they can kind of get a little bit more going. Had another couple that has been doing regenerative egg for like 15 years and direct to consumer, which is fun. 2 oldies this week. So many people are jumping on the bandwagon. It's so fun to talk to the guys that have been doing it for a long time and have the experience. But their daughter was farming with them, and they were wanting to do a transition, but not really any money for retirement. So we're going to have to transition by either selling or continuing to have some cattle, so we have some sort of income there. And of course, the wife wants to go on vacation and do a little remodel on the house, and he does not want any of that. So you guys, you might have to get off the farm. She said the only time we get off the farm is if we go to a conference, a farm conference. And so get off the farm. Why? Not just to make your spouse happy, but to find something else to do for retirement. And your identity is not that farm. Get off, do things that are fun, expand your horizons. It's amazing what you will learn. So for them, we've just got to figure out what's going on with that transition. And again, there's some, they had some income, no debt to speak of. They've been really, really good about paying it all off and making sure their finances are good. But not, because of the transition and their age, probably not something that we're going to be able to start on them. They definitely could be starting something on their daughter who is going to take over. Because if she's going to take over, there is definitely insurable interest there. Okay, I'm coming up to my last one. So if you guys have questions, comments, whatever, let me know, because I'll be looking for them in here in a sec. And then I have a client who we are in the middle of doing applications. And so it's a corporation and we're doing applications on 3 of the family members. And we had a very interesting conversation about who owns the policy. And that's not such a big deal, right? Like the LLC can own the policies on the 3 people that we're insuring. Great. If the LLC does not own them, everything's in the LLC. But if the LLC does not own them and the individuals own them amongst each other, it would get very hairy because there's 3. So 2 individuals could own it on one other one, right? So there's co-owners. Then these 2 would have to sign off on any loans, on any policy changes, anything like that. And he had some really good questions about if the LLC owned it. So if the LLC owns it, he said, do we have to have something in writing for the LLC that says this is the only things they can borrow the money for? Or this is how it has to get paid back? Or this is how the death benefit has to be handled upon somebody's death? And I said, most people don't do that, but yes, absolutely, that is what should happen. And so he was thinking huge, right? Long term. And long term is important because today we're all getting along. Are we going to be getting along in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now? I have no idea. And you don't have any idea. So if you are going to have policies owned on each other, make sure that you have those documentations. Make sure that that hard conversation is had today when everybody is getting along. Like he was thinking of absolutely every scenario in the world. Now, if you have a policy that is owned by the LLC, that becomes an asset of the LLC. And if the LLC gets sued, if your state does not protect life insurance, you could possibly lose that life insurance policy. Every state is different. In the state of North Dakota, it's not protected. It's the craziest thing ever. And so make sure that you're talking to your attorney. Make sure you're talking to your accountant about the taxes. The other thing, if you have an LLC and the LLC pays the premium, that premium is not a tax deduction. It is not an expense. That money is going to come to you as a distribution through the LLC. If it's an S Corp, it's a distribution. If it's an LLC, it just flows up to you as income. And again, I'm not an accountant. I'm just talking from experience of how my own stuff works. And so talk to your accountant about it. But a premium is not a business expense. It goes in, you pay the tax, and then you get the death benefit income tax free. Okay? So he had a lot of really good questions. I didn't write them all down. And so I'm probably forgetting some of them. But still a lot of good questions. If the LLC, good question, Dave. If the LLC owns a policy on another partner of the LLC is the beneficiary. Now, this is actually something that I'm checking into because the insurance company, it might be different amongst companies, but the company that we're writing this through, they want the LLC to be the beneficiary. Nobody in particular can be. And the reason that came up is because this family wants the LLC to be the beneficiary, but they also want the living spouse. If one of the boys dies, they want the living spouse to get some of the death benefit. And the insurance company said, no, you can't do that. If the LLC owns it, the LLC needs to be beneficiary. I don't quite understand why that is. So that's a question I have for the insurance company. However, Thank you for asking that, because that brings me to one of the topics that I forgot about. Does it matter who gets the money? If the LLC gets the money to buy out the spouse, because what they were thinking is the spouse is going to get, let's say it's going to be $100,000 to buy out the spouse. The spouse gets 100 and the LLC gets the difference. Okay? What does it matter if the LLC gets all of it and takes 100 and pays her? Either way, she got her money. It's one pool of money. We don't necessarily need to separate it. You can just put that in the agreement of the LLC that upon Joe's death, that the LLC will buy out his spouse at X amount of dollars. And we know that if Joe dies, we have life insurance on him, and that money's gonna go to the LLC. So we don't really need to make sure, like, it wasn't really a big deal at the end of the day that the insurance company said, no, the spouse can't be a beneficiary. Ideally, though, if you have it in an LLC, you want the LLC to get that money. That's why it's there, is so that the LLC has the money to continue to operate. And if that LLC has to use it to buy somebody out, ultimately doesn't matter, because the living people, the living owners of the LLC will have the money to do that. So a good reminder that it's one pool of money. And he had a couple other questions that basically came down to the same answer, which doesn't matter. The end result is the same. And so how we get there, we can skin a cat more than one way, right? Okay. That was the last big thing. I did not have any other major things that would be like earth-shattering to share. I don't think so. So if you guys have any more questions, thanks for all the questions tonight, Dave. If you guys have any more questions, comments, whatever, let me know. If you have, it's my typical thing. If you're new and you're listening and you've not gotten the books, you can go to farmingwithoutthebank.com, grab all the books. Man, do I have a lot of people loving Nelson's book. And then, of course, there is Warehouse to Wealth, which is Nelson's second book. And if you've not read that one's good as well. If you've not listened to my podcast, go on to whatever podcast app you want. Listen to that. It's on farmingwithoutthebank.com. It is on YouTube, so you can see that there as well. If you have any private questions, comments, feel free to message me in my inbox. Yes, I am the one that answers those those messages. Nobody else answers those. And so, if I'm commenting on something on Facebook, it's typically me too. Everybody else is so nice. I just get right to the point. I don't say, oh, hey, thanks for answering, or thanks for asking. No, here's your answer. All right, let's see what Shane's got here. You're right, Shane. Oh, you know what, Shane? He mentioned that. He mentioned that his grass was super good and that they could sell some of it because they wouldn't necessarily need all of it or something. Because right now, I think their dad is haying it with equipment that is always breaking down. But yeah, they actually did talk about that. But yes, that's good to bring that up. You're welcome, Dave. I'm glad you understood that. Oh, thanks, Enrique. I appreciate that. Okay, that's all I've got, folks. That was a fast one tonight. As always, let me know if there is absolutely anything that I can do or answer. I did have a couple agents reach out to me this week that were not using the correct tools with questions, and so beware, beware, beware. You can take it as a challenge, that's fine, but beware. Anyway, thank you. Have a good rest of your night, and we will see you back here next Thursday. Have a good one. Have a good week.